And welcome back to another episode of Epic Exchanges, everybody. I am super excited to have our first children's book author with me today. So this is something new that we're trying here on the podcast as we bring it back. And once a month, we are going to feature a children's book and the author. We're going to read the story like it's story time in the library or at school or at night before bed, and bring you into the book. And then we're going to have a little discussion with the author at the end about why they decided to write the book, what they hope people get from it, and anything else that comes up. So please help me welcome Allison Parry. Allison, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, hi, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. So my name is Allison Parry, and I live on in Anus Bay on Vancouver Island. I've got two daughters, a husband, and a cute dog. And for years, my husband has been urging me to get my story out there. And I put it off and put it off. And I thought, no, now's the time. So about a year and a bit ago, I started putting together my children's book, Emmie the Empath, which is about a girl named Emmie who is a deep feeler and finds out she, in fact, is an empath. And myself growing up, I always felt a little bit like I didn't fit in. Maybe I was a little bit oversensitive, but I didn't know what that meant or what that was. It wasn't until, gosh, about 10 years later that I heard the word empath for the first time. And that was basically my basis for the story of Emmie the Empath.
That's great, because having been in the same position and not being able to put words to what I was feeling and why I was feeling it so intensely, I think this is great. So why don't we just jump in, and we're going to let Allison read her story. I am going to share the pictures on the screen while she's reading, so that we don't have weird angles or that she doesn't have to do gymnastics while she's reading. But yeah, let's just jump in.
That sounds wonderful. Okay. Emmie the Empath and the Kintsugi Vase. Emmie awoke to a big wet lick across her face from her dog Silky. This was her personal alarm clock every morning for school. She quickly got dressed, grabbed a muffin, and headed to the bus stop. As the school bus pulled up, Emmie took a deep breath. She would often get nervous before heading to school. Even though she would wake up energetic, excited, and looking forward to what the day would bring, like clockwork, when she boarded the bus, her energy would change, and she never knew why. She had always felt different, but had done her best to fit in. Em, come sit over here with me, her best friend Katie called out. Katie had been Emmie's closest friend since they were 4. So, Em, how excited are you for Sophie's slumber party? I literally can't wait. Sounds like there's going to be loads of us sleeping over. Not like we're going to be doing much sleeping. Emmie gave a half-hearted smile, trying to fake some excitement for her friend. Truthfully, Emmie would have preferred a night in, cuddling with Silky and watching her favorite movie while munching down on popcorn. As the bus pulled up to school and everyone headed off to their classes, Emmie couldn't help but notice Abby looking sad. She didn't know Abby super well, but they had a couple of classes together, and Abby always seemed to keep to herself. Hey, Katie, do you think I should see if Abby's okay? It seems like something's on her mind. Katie shrugged and said, I hadn't noticed, but I'm sure she's fine. And we're already going to be late for art class if we don't hustle. Go ahead without me. I'll see you in class, Emmie replied. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was weighing heavy on Abby's mind. In fact, now Emmie almost felt sad too. And so she was feeling what Abby was. This happened to Emmie a lot. She seemed to take on the emotions of her friends and couldn't figure out why. Hey, Abby, how was your weekend? Emmie asked as they walked towards the main school entrance together. Well, my cat died, but she was pretty old, I guess. Abby frowned, chewing her lower lip. Oh, Abby, I'm so sorry. I remember when our first dog passed away. I was so sad, Emmie replied. As the girls walked to their classrooms, Abby paused for a second. Hey, Emmie, thanks for the talk. It helped me feel a lot better. Anytime, Abby, said Emmie. Abby smiled as they both waved goodbye. Emmie made it just in time to her class as the morning school bell rang. Good morning, everyone. How are you wonderful people today? Mrs. Kinley, the art teacher, asked. Mrs. Kinley was Emmie's favorite teacher. She made it exciting to learn and try new things. If a student was frustrated, she was always there to help. Not only was Mrs. Kinley super fun, but she was also passionate about teaching different art techniques from around the world. She filled her classroom walls and shelves with beautiful pieces she'd collected from her travels. Emmie couldn't wait to find out what project they would learn about today. Hey, Emmie, would you give me a hand passing these vases out to everyone? Mrs. Kinley asked. Emmie could only imagine what Mrs. Kinley had planned. Maybe they would paint the vases in bright, vibrant colors or collage them with the beautiful origami paper Mrs. Kinley had brought back from her trip to Japan. Okay, class, I'd like you to pick up your vase, bring it up over your head, and let it drop, Mrs. Kinley explained with excitement. You could tell that everyone in class was totally confused. Did they hear the instructions correctly? There was a pause and then a sudden smash as Noah released his vase, then Zach, then Elena, until the room filled with a symphony of breaking pottery. Emmie let her vase drop to the floor and felt the same satisfaction she got from popping bubble wrap on Christmas Day. But now what? Each student now had pieces of broken vases lying at their feet. How fun was that? Mrs. Kinley asked the class with a giggle. Now that you all think I finally lost my marbles, I'd like to tell you about Kintsugi. She explained that Kintsugi was the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery by mending the pieces together with lacquer mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. Mrs. Kinley explained that her grandmother first introduced her to this art form. Her grandmother had grown up in Japan and learned this technique from her own grandmother. Kintsugi is about embracing flaws and creating an even stronger and more beautiful piece of art. You see, there is beauty in the parts of us we may think aren't beautiful. She began telling the class about a time when she was a little girl. I have always been very sensitive, meaning I can easily feel another person's energy, which simply means if someone is feeling sad, I can feel sad as well. Or if someone is happy, I feel that way too. It also means that because I'm so sensitive to energy, I need time alone to recharge my battery. You can think of energy as the gas tank of a car. When it's empty, it needs to be refilled. Some people refill their tanks by being around people, and some can only refill their tanks by having quiet alone time. One day, I came home from school very sad. My grandmother happened to be visiting and noticed how upset I was. When I was growing up, she always seemed to be there when I needed someone to talk to, and this time was no different. She wrapped me in her arms and said, "Why the tears, sweetie?" I told her I thought there must be something wrong with me. I explained that it was hard for me to be around lots of people because it made me tired, and I couldn't figure out why. My dear child, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. In fact, you have an incredible and special gift, my grandmother told me. You are what is known as an empath. She explained that the gift of being an empath is that you can understand how someone is feeling without them having to tell you. The challenge is being able to tell the difference between other people's energy and your own. Just as a magnet attracts certain types of metals, an empath attracts the energy of people around them, which can sometimes make them feel very tired. My grandmother knew all of this because she was also an empath and had been since she was little, before anyone even knew what the word empath meant. That day, she told me about meditation, breathing, and kintsugi, and how all three things could help me feel better and relax. I can look back on that day now as the day I decided to become an art teacher to help teach others how to have fun while getting creative. Mrs. Kinley adjusted her messy bun. Okay, who's ready to get creative and get our energy flowing? She asked with an enthusiastic smile. Each student carefully collected the broken pieces of their vase and began to slowly put it back together. As Emmie dipped her paintbrush into the lacquer of gold dust, she felt at peace. By the time the bell rang and art class was over, Emmie had created a beautiful, one-of-a-kind creation. She had transformed the vase into something even more interesting than its original form. It was though each of its unique golden cracks told a story. If the vase was still in its original form, Emmie thought, it wouldn't come close to the piece of the art it had turned into. Today, Emmie learned what it meant to be an empath, and for the first time realized that's what she was. But now that she knew this, how could she help other empaths? How could she let them know what an amazing gift they had? She had to spread the word to others with the same gift, and she would start today.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing
You're
that.
welcome.
I guess the first question I'd like to ask you is, I encourage people to tell their stories, but why a children's book?
I felt for me, it was the book I wish I had when I was growing up. And I thought, okay, this is a perfect way to explain something to kids who possibly are struggling to figure out why they're feeling the way they are. The funny thing is I wrote it for kids, but a lot of adults have actually said, oh gosh, I wish this was the book I had growing up, because now there's a word for what I was feeling. And so it's been a really cool experience.
Well, I love it. Obviously, I was drawn to it. I was on vacation and saw it in the gift shop, and I was like, I have to read this. And then I was like, I need to share this with more people. So I'm so glad you're here and that you said yes.
Thank you.
What have you noticed in kids that have heard the story? You've talked about the adults that have read it and have responded positively, but what about the kids? What about your own girls?
I think for my own girls, who I would definitely say are empaths, as a lot of kids are being born in these years, I think it just gave them peace of mind and almost like more acceptance of themselves to just be who they are, and just knowing, I think, inner peace that there's nothing wrong with them.
You talk about the tools that the teacher's grandmother gave her to manage things. Do you have any plans or thoughts that you might write companion books, maybe teaching some of those tools?
It's funny you said that. You must be in my mind. So that's the next idea that keeps coming to me, is a companion book where tools can be shared. So maybe not so much Emmie's story, but almost more of a manual for kids for parents to be able to utilize the tools that help, and almost maybe a journal as well. So that is in the works. Well, it's in the works up here. It's
Right.
Yeah.
I love those ideas, and I can't wait to see what you do with them. What do you hope people take from your book?
I think for me, the biggest takeaway is for people to just really accept themselves, be authentically them. I've heard before someone say just to shine your weird, because the world needs more of that. But just to be yourself and to love yourself. It's so important, and to know it when you're growing up, and not have to wait decades like I did trying to kind of fit in, and I think truly the more that we can be ourselves, other people see our light on, and it gives them permission to be themselves. So yeah, I would say that.
I talk about the art of Kintsugi in my book, Your Story, Your Strength. And so that was another reason why I was drawn to yours, because you talk about that so many levels. But if people want to get your book, how can they find it? Where can they find it?
The best way would be it's on Amazon.
Okay.
That's the best way right now. They can also go to my website, www.empathmum.ca, and there's a link that will take you to Amazon as well. If you happen to be over on Vancouver Island, there's some local places. It's at some local places in the community as well. So, but the easiest probably would just be to go to Amazon right now.
I apologize if anybody can hear the siren that's out my window right now. It's very noisy, so I apologize. We will be sure to include all the links on our show notes and in the description here on YouTube, right down below, so people can easily click to buy. If you were to leave people with one thing from our discussion, from sharing the book, what would that be?
Oh, that's a good question. I sort of touched on it, but for me, it's just be yourself. Be yourself, shine bright, and pay attention to what Emmie was saying in the book. How do you refill your energy tank? And to not compare to anybody else. Yeah, just pay attention to what you need, and be yourself, and love yourself, and self-care. And all those good things. But this is sort of my long answer, is really not to compare to others, because we all get our energy in different ways. And as it said in the book, some people get their energy being around lots and lots of people. Some people need to go inward and have that quiet time. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So good words, be yourself, know how you refuel yourself, and don't compare, because we, just like the Kintsugi vases, we're all different, we're all unique, and we are all beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Allison, for coming on the podcast, for sharing your book and sharing your story behind the book too. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.